Be careful what you wish for, because every time I've started out on a business or a new venture, I'm really good at looking where it's going to be. So I go from A to Z in one leap and then make the plan halfway between. I always spawn a monster, so it's become a bit of a joke, and it always gets unwieldy and it saps you in, and then you have to unentwine yourself. I've had a blast. So I've always had a no regret policy, whether that's about business, relationships, anything I've ever done. I think I'm also good at learning from my mistakes, but maybe I'd say to myself, make less mistakes. Be careful who you go into business with. I was in partnership with this group of 8 doctors for, like I said, nearly 18 years. And that was amazing. And in a way that spoiled me. That left me unprepared for things that were to happen later.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Few with myself, Boo, and the ageless Shaun Sewell. G'day, Shaun. How are you, mate?
Great, Boo. How are you, mate?
I'm good. You're looking exceptionally fit. I feel like you've embarked upon some sort of rejuvenation program or something. What's going on there?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, just gradually shifting diet, nutrition, exercise, movement, all that sort of stuff. And rather than trying to make a massive change and then rebelling against it, actually doing things, gradually over time. So it's definitely made a difference. I feel probably, I'd say, better than I did 20 years ago. So it's a good sign.
Nice. One of the few that's exercising in winter.
Well, I live in Noosa, mate, so it doesn't get that cold.
Never gets cold. Well, I'm really excited. I feel like I'm going to be a bit of a third wheel today, to be honest, on this podcast with this incredible guest, because you and Deb have already had a bit of history in terms of having heard her story and shared it with the Inner Circle crew, and obviously it struck a chord because to get an invite on the Few podcast is way up there. I think we had to bump Mike Tyson for this one, and rightly so. So I'm going to hand over to you, man. I know I normally do the intro, but it's all yours today. Why don't you introduce our today's awesome and inspiring guest?
Absolutely, and as you said, we recently had the pleasure of Deb supporting our Inner Circle event and coming and speaking to our members a bit of a story, a bit of her life, her philosophies, her approaches, struggles and adversities that she's overcome to create the life that, become one of the few where she's had the opportunity to effectively, create the life she wants and has a massive passion for business, for doing deals and for, building incredible teams. So without any further ado, welcome to welcome to the show, Deb Farnworth-Wood. Great to have you on board.
Thanks for having me. It's lovely to see you again.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks for coming on the show. Absolutely brilliant. Now, Deb, before we get into this, we know you're a superstar, serial entrepreneur, done some wonderful stuff, but just looking at your history, are you originally from Wales?
No, I'm from, so I was actually born in Kenya, but my parents were from Lancashire in England. So I spent probably the greater part of my childhood years in Preston in Lancashire, and that's where the voice comes from. But I actually spent much longer in the southwest of England, which is kind of just below Wales. Yeah.
And it's not a town many people would spend a lot of time in, but I actually spent a lot of time in Preston. I met someone on a ski trip, and he and his wife lived in Preston. So I lived over in Lincolnshire and then up in Yorkshire. But it's an interesting place, the UK, isn't it? What did you learn about life in the UK? Because I have an opinion of the UK, and I think it's a little bit tougher than what life is here in Australia. What was growing up in the UK and Kenya, obviously? What was that like for you, your early years, formative years?
Yeah, so I was born in Kenya, but I actually left there when I was about 3. So I've got no real memories of Kenya. I'm told that I spoke Swahili until I was sort of well into my 6s and 7s. And when I was a teenager, or sort of about 20, I had a boyfriend who told me I spoke Swahili in my sleep, but I can't remember any of it now. Growing up in Preston, we were a very working class family, so very normal family. My mum and my dad separated, so I was with my mum, who was single parent. Very working class town, very normal upbringing. Definitely a lot different to Australia. I think Australia's, apart from the good weather, has got, I guess, a different approach to life. You know, I come from that background where you work really hard, nose to the grind, and if you're lucky when you retire, you can have a good time. So kind of a different philosophy here.
What brought you to end up in Australia though? Like obviously you've been in a few different places, you lived in a few different places. What ended up bringing you down under?
Well, we when my husband and I got married, we decided we were going to get married in Australia, mainly because a really good friend of ours got married in England, although to her Australian partner, and we sort of hosted the wedding for them. So when it came for time for us to get married, they kind of said, well, why don't we reciprocate? You can get married here. So we came and got married just on Majimba Beach, actually, in the Sunshine Coast. And my husband just immediately fell in love with the lifestyle here and the water, the sand, and all of the rest. But at that time, I didn't really think it was so great. It was a beautiful place to have a holiday, but I couldn't imagine living here. It was much quieter at the time. So we're talking 1993. And then for the sort of next 15 years, my husband nagged and moaned. And every time he got the opportunity, would say, can we go live in Australia yet? And eventually, I reached the decision that it was his turn to have something his way. So I agreed, and he wanted me to retire, and he was retiring too. And so we decided that we'd retire here. But I got bored in retirement very quickly.
How long did retirement last the first time around?
About 6 weeks.
That was probably a stretch too, I imagine.
Yeah, the first few weeks was really exciting because we were looking for somewhere to live and finding schools for the kids. So I wasn't exactly short of things to do, and I didn't have any time on my hand. But then once all that was sorted out, it was kind of, now what do I do? And I'm so fair-skinned, you know, going to the beach every day was not an option. And going out for lunch every day was just not my lifestyle. And I didn't know anybody, and I didn't know anything here. I suppose the biggest change for me was I went from being really well known in my field and really good at what I did in the UK. And I used to speak at conferences there, and I was written in the magazines and so on and so forth. And I came here and I was completely anonymous. And, you know, that seemed like a good idea at the time. And then when reality hit was, oh, now what do I do? You kind of lost my sense.
Did you feel that might have bruised your ego a little bit at the time? It's like, oh, shit, suddenly I've become anonymous again, or how did that feel?
It was yeah, slightly bruised ego, but it was actually more about what's my sense of purpose now. Now what do I do? And I found myself in a position I've never been in before, whereas I suddenly had to credential myself everywhere I went. And the number of people who, it's a lot more chauvinistic here, I would say. So the number of people who'd look at me like I'm some crazy girl who thought she could do things that she couldn't do was quite alarming. So suddenly had to, I suppose, start reproving myself in a way that I'd had to do 20 years before in the UK. So it was tough.
So tell us a little bit about your journey into entrepreneurship. I mean, that's the bit that really got me interested in your story, and your background is what you've actually done in the business world, and how you've applied your skills and background and learnings to multiple different industries and businesses. How did you know, obviously you're in Australia, you're retired. Let's go back a step. You know, what were you doing prior to that in business, and then what did you start to do here in Australia?
Yeah, so sort of the 18 years before I came to Australia, I was in business with a group of doctors, and I suppose that would be the bulk of my career, as you call it, but obviously it was business ownership. And the steps that brought me to that were a little varied. So I'd done some hospitality, I'd done retail, I'd worked for a few of the big shed companies and done some IT work in terms of systems development and systems and procedures development. And I'd done store opening, and I'd trained. I was a regional trainer. I used to mentor managers who came into one of the systems I worked for and train them as well. So I'd kind of done a bit of everything. And I think I was very lucky that this would have all started in the 80s. It was a time when you could, a bit like you can now, you could walk in and out of job on a day when you wanted to. So it was very easy to hop from promotion to promotion and company to company. And I was able to, in a very short space of time, gain a lot of experience in just about every part of a business. So I could do accounts, I understood cash management, I understood tills and sales. At one point I had 250 staff. out of season, and then 450 staff when it was Christmas. So I'd done a lot of staff management. I'd done goods inwards and good outwards, and I'd done systems. So I had a collection of skill sets, probably jack of all trades and master of none, but a great overview. So when I went into business with the doctors, I was the first non-GP to be a partner in general practice in the UK. Had to get the rules changed to do that. And then I was with this incredible group of people who were full of ideas and full of, great ideas, but not really in a position, because they were GPs, they were seeing patients every day, to deliver those. So my skill set was a perfect alignment, really. I kind of just really figured out everything, and what I didn't know, I'd ask. It's that simple. So although I was with them for 18 years and I was the managing partner in the business, every 6 months I was doing almost a different job. So we were buying a pharmacy and I was developing the pharmacy, or we were bringing a robot from Germany to speed up our dispensing. So then I was a technical person for 6 months, and the role just changed and evolved as we went along. So
how do you think, Deb, how do you think the ability to be adaptable has helped you in your business career or your overall career? Because you've obviously, by the sounds of it, moved between very varied and different skill sets, but that must come with the ability to be very adaptable and willing to just quickly immerse yourself into something and learn something new.
Yeah, and two things. It's not just that I'm willing to do it, it's that I get bored if I don't. So part of that is I'm constantly looking for the thing to do next. In fact, right now I'm looking for things to do next already. So part of it, if it wasn't an idea that came from one of the other partners, then it would have been my ideas that would go, and it kind of alternated between them, to be honest with you. And so the other side to that is, to do that, you have to be able to train and coach the people beneath you so that they can take those roles from you for you to leap onto the next one. And I was taught that at a very early age. One of the first managers I ever worked for, on my first or second day with him, said to me, your job is to learn this and then teach someone else it so you can do the next thing. And that's the way I've operated all the way through.
And I love that philosophy, because one of the things that we teach from, in a circle group, and the focus is teaching people to create a freedom business. And unless you can get someone else to do the things you were doing, you're never going to be free of your business. So it sounds like, obviously learning that at a very young age would have been hugely beneficial. So, all right, so you had that partnership, and obviously it sounded like you had some great people there, but things like all good things potentially can come to an end. What happened towards the end of that situation where it actually got you to, to change where you're at, change what you were doing, as far as the partnership is concerned? Because I know that a lot of people ask me that question is, I'm thinking of joining with this person or bringing this person into my business, and it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread. And often it's not, because of the complexities of having partnerships. So how did that pan out for you?
That's a long time too. Like that's a serious commitment.
It's like
that sort of
longer than most people's marriages.
In truth, it felt like a few years. When I actually look back and went, wow, it's almost 18 years. It was, where did those years go? But obviously in between I had children. Sean and I did lots of property renovations and property flipping, and
the husband's name's Sean, just to remove the confusion there, because people at the event were like, hang on, Sean. Oh, sorry.
What was it, Deb, that made it feel like it was always interesting, like in terms of inverted commas work?
So I suppose I am forever learning. So I really do enjoy taking a challenge on, learning everything about it. I like immersive learning, so I like to just focus on whatever the new thing is and drop everything else. So that meant that I was always doing a different job pretty much. I got the opportunity to be involved in things like the Prime Minister's Office of Public Reform, and go do think tanks with them, and rubber windmill scenarios, which were kind of strategic planning events. I got to speak at conferences. We set up a not-for-profit. We did some amazing things with health service funds, which meant that the public money got spread further, more people got treatments and faster. So it was kind of a whole raft of things. Plus we also did some private business things and just built an empire, really. And the group were all amazingly flexible in what they allowed me to do. So if I decided I wanted to go off and do a consultancy job for a few months, I could go and do that. all the money just went back into the partnership, but I had a good time doing something different, and they knew that kept me interested. It also kept me in the thick of what was going on at national level as well in terms of the NHS.
How did that start though? Like, what was it that, because if you look at the research around new businesses, new ideas, statistically, it's fairly poor, right? Like doing something new is about a 5% chance of success, new business, maybe 10%. Like, what was it about this one that made it sticky?
So you mean the partnership business?
Yeah.
I think the people were really unique. I look back now and I think I could probably never find a similar group of people to that again. So we had a huge trust sort of ethic that we all did the right thing by the practice. We never really fell out. We only ever had one row, and that was after 15 years we were allowed a sabbatical. And when it got to my sabbatical, they didn't want me to have it because they didn't want me to go away for a year. And that was the only falling we ever had out, because I was furious that, and they said, oh, you're not replaceable. So if they had a sabbatical, they would bring a Dr. Locum in. And I had arranged a management consultant to come in and cover me, but they didn't like that idea and they didn't want me to go. So, but apart from that, we never fell out. We ran, everything in our business was done by the majority vote. So the majority always won. And we all...
So I'm assuming, Deb, that it was because you guys were values aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I suppose
so you stood for the same things.
Yeah.
You had the same like purpose and goal. You were aligned on values of who you were as people, and how you all showed up.
Everyone must have been successful as well. Like, you must have been winning and succeeding a lot, because no one really wants to hang around if you're not kicking goals. So I presume everyone pulled the equivalent amount of weight. Maybe you pulled a bit more sitting there in that MD role, but I'd imagine that was part of it as well. Like, it was a fun ride because it was successful.
Yeah, I think we all respected that we all had different aspirations for ourselves. So some of the GPs wanted to be trainers. Some, had special interests in particular illnesses. And so some wanted to be full-time, some wanted to be part-time. So we just made the system work. We all had a say. We did everything on a majority vote. I would never say we all ever agreed on everything all the time. So if we, if a particular partner was outvoted, for any particular motion, we would just suck it up and know that next time we'd probably get what we wanted. The doctors were all very passionate about being doctors. So with the exception of just 2 or 3 of them, they weren't necessarily that interested in the business, other than were we getting paid or making money, I guess. And they were happy to leave a lot of the business matters to the few partners that were interested in money. And similarly, obviously, I never got involved in any of the medical stuff because I'm not a doctor, although I did actually sometimes get involved in things like service side of being in medical practice. So I might get involved in complaints if there's a complaint or something like that. So yeah, that was how it worked.
So let's fast forward now. You've left the partnership behind. You've moved to a new country. You're now infamous as opposed to famous, for want of a better term. And what do you do next? You're here. You get here. You retire for 6 weeks, and then you're bored.
So to actually get here, I discovered the fastest way to get a visa to live in Australia was to buy a business. And one of the last things I'd done before I was leaving England was actually we started a fledgling aesthetic clinic. So we sort of did Botox and fillers, and we were looking at lasers and things like that. And I'd also investigated or done the due diligence actually on an aesthetic practice that was near us. And the idea would have been to move that into the medical centre. But around that time, we had 2 or 3 of the more senior and older partners were getting a little bit I would say more cautious because they were approaching retirement, and there wasn't a huge amount of enthusiasm for having a laser clinic in the practice. And so with that knowledge, and I had this really firm belief that this was going to be big, and boy, I was right, but this was going to be a big thing. I looked for an aesthetic practice here to buy, and that was the one that I found was the original Australian Skin Clinic, which was just one clinic at the time. So when we moved, I had this notion that it would be run under management, because when I bought it, it came with a manager in it. and that I would be retired, but I'd potter in and out when I felt I needed something to do. So that was kind of the idea. But after about 6 weeks, there was also talk about the GFC, which at that time was biting down more in the UK and Europe than it was here at that point. And I suddenly thought, you know what, maybe I should go back to work and take care of this business, look for the opportunity in this. And
what did you see though? So like when you go, okay, I've got these set of glasses from all my experience, my background, knowing all these different areas of business, working in a partnership that has all sorts of personalities to deal with. You're now involved in this business. You're looking at this business to go, okay, what are the opportunities? I want to understand your thought process that you went through to actually help to identify those so that people listening to this podcast can be like, shit, that's how you do it. That's how you look for an opportunity in a business.
well, I mean, that thought process was already in my head from England. So that this is what started the interest in these sort of clinics. And that was, I had this memory when I was probably about 12 or 13, my mum meeting me from school one day. And the parents of one of my school friends was chatting to my mum. And after she walked away, my mum made this comment about how she had more money than sense, which is a very northern expression. So she said she had more money than sense because she spent so much on her hair, and she'd had her hair streaked. Now, that's something we do every single day here. I mean, just about every woman does something to their hair. But back then, not many people did. And I'd looked at that and thought, you know what? One day, everyone will have Botox and fillers in the same way that everyone now has streaks and colours and perms and all the rest. And that was an absolute conviction I had early on. And I can't say it was given to me by anyone. It was just an occurrence in my head that this is the way that would go. And in fact, that's been the case. Saying that, only 2%, less than 2% of people have had Botox so far. So there's still a huge scope there. But when at the point when I bought that one clinic, it was not common. It was secret women's business. Our customers didn't talk about it the way they do now. And it was, in fact, one of the things we did was we took it into shopping centres, and that's what made it much more high profile.
Yeah, people didn't talk about getting Botox or fillers or something like that. It was just like, well, you look different. Oh yeah, I've got a new exercise regime or something. It wasn't really normal.
People still don't really talk about it, do they? It's like it's
not to the men, I find. So back then, I'd go to lunch and he'd sit across from someone who's completely unmoving in the face, must have had 100-unit face, and they would swear I would never get that done. Whereas now they kind of know, we can tell. So no, women don't make those comments to me, but I find a lot of women are happy to talk about it to the girls, but not to the boys. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. And one of the other interesting approaches, Deb, you've taken here is like a lot of entrepreneurs think you've got to come up with some technology idea, right? And then I'm in the tech space and tech. Your approach is quite different. And I think the approach you took is probably the smarter one, which is actually to buy a business and build it rather than go through the 3 years of will it work, won't it work? I mean, by the time you look at the investment and capital that you put into a startup, pure startup, compared to the capital and debt that you can secure to acquire an existing business, you're probably better off taking something that exists now and making it better, which it sounds exactly like you did. So what was it about that mindset to buy and grow a business rather than just start one completely from scratch? Like what was your thought process there?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I've done both in my lifetime, and actually I feel like I can do both, but you come to a bit of a wisdom where, as you say, you realize the smarter move is to buy an existing and make it better. It's like hitting the ground running and taking it further faster. So yeah, without a doubt, that was. And I think when I bought the first Australian skin clinic, I wasn't really convinced I would open any more or develop it. Like I said, it truly was just for a visa, albeit that thought didn't last too long. Growing Australian skin clinics was really fast, but I did the hard yakka first. So I actually spent about 3 years before we launched the first franchise, honing the model, making sure it was profitable, eliminating treatments that were either too difficult to do or didn't make any money, or the ones that were offered by too many people. So, there wasn't such a great market for them. So there was probably 3 years. I still had that hard 3 years, but it was a different type of hard. It wasn't about proving the business would work. It was entirely what you say. It was making the business better.
And how, elaborate how you then took that from a single location. What was the decision to then go, you know what, I reckon we can expand this thing and expand it quite substantially?
The business was way too complex. So there was about 50 different treatments we did. We had about 7 grades of staff. Training was a nightmare. We had a whole store room in this little clinic with a store person was need to manage all the different consumables and orders and things that we needed. And to replicate that as a franchise or even as a corporate clinic would be very difficult. So we scaled down the treatments. We looked at what was the most profitable. We looked at ones that were the safest. We ruled out ones that were just either too hard because they needed a doctor level and doctors were harder to get than nurses. And we weeded out things that were just straight beauty that everybody and their dog could do. And so we also we had a 14-room clinic that was difficult to replicate. So we made it a 5-room operation. So all that background work was done, and there was a lot of analysis, a lot of data, a lot of planning, and then we opened our first franchise. And the idea was the first one we would run for a year. It was in a shopping centre. It was a 5-room clinic, and we would see how that worked for a year. And then if that was successful, then we'd look at a second one. But the reality was, the day that one opened, one of my the franchisee in there was a staff member, and I maintained 50% of it. So she bought half and I bought half. And the day that one opened, we were offered another site. So that was in Helensvale, and we were offered a site in Mabina. And another staff member came to me and said, I want that Mabina site. So the first one opened, I think it was the October or November, and the second one opened in March. And then we opened, I think, 3 more that year. It just went really quickly.
How big? You know, I was in Sydney a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, in Castle Hill, in Castle Towers, and walked past one of them. I just thought, oh, there's one of those franchises right there. How many did you expand it to? Like when you grew it to its, its largest?
So I grew to 24 full Australian skin clinic franchises. And then I merged. Then we did a merger with another company that brought in another 24. So that went to 48. Actually, no, I think those numbers are skewed. It was 24 when we first started speaking to them, but when we merged, it was 60. And some of those were in New Zealand as well.
And then what did you do? What did you do next? You'd end up exiting that business at some stage?
Yeah, so I exited that. I sold that, sold my shares out of that in 2019. And then sort of tried.
Was that to retire again?
Yes, unsuccessfully again.
And how long did it last this time?
A bit longer. Well, it didn't fully retire because I actually kept that original clinic. So the original one, I owned the building off. So rather than complicate matters by selling that and being the landlord to the people who bought the rest of the brand, I decided I would just keep that clinic, and I rebranded that. And it was still at that stage only working on half the floor space that it had originally started out on. So the upstairs I had offices in. So I did just some speaking and mentoring and coaching for kind of a bit of I won't say hobby because I was doing it seriously, but not trying to make a full-time job out of it. And then this little skincare company called Valor, it's a men's skincare range, caught my eye one day. And I just I saw it in the shop, made some inquiries, Googled it, and it turned out the brand was for sale. And I thought, it's got my name on it. So I bought Valor, which is a sort of very hipster type beard and skincare brand for men, born and bred in Byron Bay. So I took that on, and for about a year or two previously, the former owner of Issada had been talking to me, asking advice on building the business, looked to see if I was interested in going into business with her, which I didn't think was a good option. And then she came back to me at that time and said, did I fancy buying Issada? And I'd known her about 10 or 12 years. So I knew quite a lot about the business. And I thought, you know what, this is a really good opportunity to take this on. So Issada was just purely makeup. But by then I'd already started to develop another skincare range. And so we were selling that in our one clinic, and it was really successful. So like everybody was loving it. So I decided I could rebrand that to Issada and launch that as part of the Issada company, which is what we did. I would say we because we're inclusive, but it was me.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said. I was going to actually ask that question. So you say we a lot, but based on the story that I heard a few weeks ago, you were the driver. And I think business owners in general, I hear them use the we language a lot because they're not really willing to, on some level, completely own the fact that they have actually created it. And I do find myself doing that as well when I'm inclusive of my team, and they're incredible people, and I'm blessed to have them, and it's just amazing. But in the end, without the me, there wouldn't be the we. And sometimes as business owners, I think we need to remember that we are the ones that actually are the visionary, the creator. We've done this. And I suppose one thing I'm hearing here is the serial nature of your entrepreneurial actions. What is that driver? What's the fuel or that fire that keeps you going from, doing this, having a partnership in the UK, coming to Australia, getting into the clinics, and then expanding it, then merging it, and then buying one skincare range, then buying a makeup brand, and combining your existing skincare with that? And like, why? What is it that gets you up in the morning?
So I think it's all started at a place where I just wanted my own independence. So as I shared a bit with you with the mastermind group, my sort of early childhood was not a particularly happy one. Age 13, I decided to leave home, and as soon as I possibly could, and started making plans to do so. And so I think I've just always sought this independence, not being reliant on anybody else for money, not having anyone tell me what to do. And then I don't know whether I just naturally talented at finding things to do, or recognize the things I should take on or not take on. I don't know what my superhero skill is. I guess good at seeing opportunities. And I just think...
But it's not just seeing opportunity though, Deb.
No,
it sounds like you grab it with both hands, right?
Yeah.
And squeeze the life out of it, so to speak. Like, you're not doing it on a half-assed basis. It's like, I'm going to do this. But so by the sounds of it, you're probably somewhat similar to Bill and I, where there's always some sort of action, there's always some sort of activity, there's also maybe a bit of ADD or something going on of having to be creative, being the beast, making new ideas, thinking of new things, talking to new people, like creating stuff out of thin air. Why is that sounds very similar? What is it about that drives you as well?
Yeah, so I mean, it's that I think it's just that my entire sense of self-worth is based on achieving stuff, or it's almost like I have to justify my own existence to myself. I don't know whether it's the right thing to say. Sometimes I've actually thought, have I got a bit of autism going on? Because one of the traits of some people on the spectrum is that they focus obsessively on one thing. And I always say, I genuinely believe I can do anything, but I can't do everything at once. And whatever I'm doing well, but it's usually because that's what I'm doing almost in its entirety. So I think that's the thing. Definitely, I believe I have ADD, and as I'm getting older, I am acutely aware it's getting worse. So I'm getting to the point now where I just can't close the voices in my head. I have to meditate to get some sanity.
I think there's a reason for that. I think you've probably lived the average lifetime 4 times over, and therefore there's 4 times as many memories and experiences and voices and emotions. And I think the poor old brain, for people that tend to, feel every day as much as possible as you get a bit older, it's like, there's not a lot of, we've got the same 86 billion neurons I was born with. Something's got to give.
I'm sure you're right. And I think, that's something that I'm taking very seriously at the moment. So if I'm working on anything at the moment, obviously apart from the business, is I am working on that for myself, just to try and give myself some headspace, because I do feel, I'm 58 now. So the years that this has gone on for is enough, really. I do need to get some headspace. But still, even though I'm supposed to be kind of semi-retiring again, I can't imagine how I'm going to fill the days if I stop. I can't stop.
No, and I feel the same way. People are like, one of my goals when I was in my teens, people say, what do you want to do when you grow up? I go, I don't know, but I'm going to retire by the time I'm 35. And they go, what are you going to do? Do lawn bowls or something? I said, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do then. Now, careful what you wish for is a big thing. You said that actually in one of our conversations. I didn't say I wanted to be retired at 35 and, with $5 million, sitting in the bank and $1 million a year coming in. I didn't quite go to that level of detail, but I could have stopped and sat on the beach, wouldn't have had a hugely, lavish lifestyle, but I could have actually stopped at 35. But it's like, to me, retirement is not something that computes in my brain. Like, it's like, yes, I'll slow down at times and I'll speed up. And like you, I believe that focusing on something really intently at the cost of everything else is how I work best. And then what's next? What's next? There's no point spreading yourself out and trying to do 18 different things. I tried that, didn't work. All it did was made me much more grumpy, upset, unhealthy, and all the rest of it. But I feel that those of us that are driven, that have that achiever kind of personality, that desire to learn new things, to create, are always going to have that desire until our heart stops beating. I just think it's always going to be there. And it's the concept of retirement was exiting a job that you'd had for your whole life and going there and sitting on your porch on a rocking chair and doing nothing. That I couldn't think of anything worse.
My grandmother's 94, 95 next year, and has as much energy as I do, in my 40s. And when you look at, I think she was fairly entrepreneurial, very much a female businesswoman back in the 50s and 60s, which was very, not in vogue. But I think what's inspiring about her, though, is that she just stays active all the time. She's always busy in the house and fixing things up, and lives by herself and has a little share trading platform, and just constantly busy, just doing little things and not resting and reading books and
having purpose every day.
Yeah.
Having some sort of purpose every day. And my grandfather passed away at 98, and he was completely fit and healthy till about 95. And then his heart started to go, but same thing. His garden was his favorite thing. He would go do ballroom dancing, and most of the people were 30 years younger than him. So he'd be like, look, I'm dancing with all these younger women. And he was like a bit of a stud. Or he'd be down at the club and chatting with the other guys there, but always had something to look forward to, always had something a reason to exist and to continue to exist and to live. And I find personally that the vehicle of business and the complexities and the strategy you got to come up with and the people you work with, there's so much variety that it's never going to get old. That's how I look at it anyway.
And I think we're meant to be creatures of habit. And if you look back when we were hunters and gatherers, that they would go out hunting and gathering every day. And I feel like I don't enjoy working at home. I like to get up, I like to have my shower, I like to get dressed and do my makeup, look smart, and go out the house for my day. And my day could start at 7, it could start at 9. Sometimes it finishes early, sometimes it finishes late. But I just had that day of purpose that I planned, and I had a diary and I did the things. And, if you get me on a weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, I'm really happy not to do too much. So most weekends I do work in between things. My brain doesn't stop, so I'll often will do things and put down ideas or blog or whatever. But that's leisurely.
I don't know what that's like at all.
But that's leisurely. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I would do if I didn't work. It's funny. I've got to find something, though, because it's, not sustainable to do this. Maybe it is. I don't know.
Well, I got to tie back to your comment before, Boo, about the concepts of potentially and for business people out there, and something that we're focused on too in our inner circle group is about acquiring businesses. And I was chatting with one of my members today, and he's like, I cannot believe how many thousands of businesses are out there for sale. And I'm like, and some of them are really good businesses, and they have no idea how to sell them. They have no idea how to run them. And you could literally get in there and double its value in a matter of 3 months just by applying good business fundamentals. And if they've gone and invested 10 years to get 1,000 clients, why wait another 10 years and go get 1,000 clients yourself? You can buy 1,000 clients and particularly use funding from somebody else that's not your money. Then, it's an incredible vehicle for either getting into a business or growing your business, is by actually acquiring something and plugging it in or running it alongside. And you get massive economies of scale when you start to have, multiple businesses running. Again, as a business owner, not for you to be operating those businesses, but for you to be sitting, overseeing those businesses as an asset, as an investment. And I think that, to me, that's definitely something I know that my team and I are actually focusing on over the next year and beyond. I think there's going to be a lot more businesses. There's obviously a lot more insolvencies that Bill and I were talking about before we jumped on this recording, that there's more insolvencies happening and opportunities there, I think, for people that can take over businesses that have gone into receivership or administration, but also those businesses where a lot of the baby boomers are going to need to get out. They're getting, they're done, and they don't know, they're still running a business like they did 20 years ago. And I think there's huge opportunity for business owners to really grow and build an incredible future by looking at taking in other businesses. What's your take on that, Deb?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Now, one thing that's always fascinated me is the number of people who want to get out of a business just when they're on the up. It's almost like, oh, this is going too fast for me. I'm not sure if I can sustain this. And then they kind of jump back. So they either restrict their own business ability by not making that extra step forward, or they try and offload it. And over the years, I've met so many people that have done that. Whereas, I'm kind of the other way around. I like the faster it grows, the more exciting it is. So I think, insolvencies is one thing. People who are giving up. I think people also now are giving up. They're probably in businesses that are not going insolvent and they're doing really well, but they're scared and they're thinking, I should get out now while I know there can be money on the table in case there isn't next year. And so, I think the opportunities are huge. They are huge. And equally,
it's interesting time though, isn't it? I mean, some of the businesses that are in the more institutionalized fields, in insurance and banking and finance, some of those are trading at multiples of 15, 20 for a small business owner, which is like insane money. And often you think there's always that, that you just, pull a Kerry Packer, right? Just sell it at the high, wait till it goes out of business and then buy it back at 20% discount, at an 80% discount.
One thing I did learn in franchising is a lot of people have a kind of an overinflated sort of sense of what they can do. And, we would regularly interview people for the franchises and just know that they were unable to succeed in a business, that they didn't have the skills or the right mindset. When there's like lots of redundancies and, there's rumors of recessions, people start to look for businesses like franchises because they believe there's a better success rate in the franchises. And there is in the franchise world, there is a lesser failure rate. As long as
you've got generally more support, haven't you? So buying into a franchise, you've generally got some other business intelligence behind it.
Yeah.
You're not just on your own trying to swim with concrete boots on. You've actually got someone that can help you.
Yeah, and if you're buying into a good franchise system, the franchisor's already learned the hard lessons. They've already got the systems and procedures. They already know how to make money. But we were often overwhelmed by the number of people who would apply for a franchise that we would turn away because they can't follow a system, or it was apparent that they wanted to spend every day on the beach. Well, it doesn't matter how good you are at business. The reality is you won't spend every day on the beach if you're trying to make money. And so it's quite interesting when you look as well at the longevity of people when the market's tough for jobs. People take their redundancy payments, invest in another business, whether it's a franchise or not a franchise, and then find that moving from the corporate world to being an entrepreneur and being in your own business is quite difficult. And then they move out of those very quickly. And I think we'll see a lot of that because people are worried about the corporate world and, there are redundancies coming and certain things happening. So that will be interesting to watch because I think even a second wave of pickup will exist there where people buy businesses and then not do very well with them and then leave, and then you can pick up again then.
One of the things I've seen too is a strategy that I've seen work successfully, and obviously this is not advice, get your own advice, is that I don't want to leave us open to some sort of liability inadvertently, that buying a number of businesses in the same space and actually rolling them together, and again can create a massive potential uplift in profitability and in value because you can deduplicate things. You may not need 3 locations if you buy 3 businesses. You may only need 1. You don't need 3 bookkeepers. You don't need 3 accountants. You've got this ability to have one system that you apply across all 3 businesses, one sales and marketing system, one CRM, one admin person can then run 3 businesses worth of clients rather than 3. And there's this ability to I believe, roll in together multiple businesses to create a much more substantial business and one that's worth a higher multiple of profit if you were to then go and sell it, because it's a much more stable business as well. And I mean, in the end, business is a system. And I think people forget that. They overcomplicate it with emotion and not knowing. And the simple thing is, particularly in Australia, people don't ask for help, right? She'll be right, mate. Don't be just kind of, just got to keep pushing on.
A few more beers and the pain.
A few more beers, and I'll just, okay, I'll do more hours. That'll fix it. Didn't work for me either. But it's about actually learning how to do it and get the support. Have you? And you said it. One of your first managers that you had in very early in your career, that to me sounded like some mentoring advice for you. How important is having people that have either been mentors or like mentors in your journey? How has that impacted you on throughout your own journey?
Yeah, so I would say I've never had one mentor the whole time, obviously, because it's been a great many years. I think probably, and because the way my career was moving so quickly in those early years, to be fair, not many people were around for long because we were all doing that. But I think over the years, I've taken really good pearls from lots of people. I've got a whole basket full of them. And on that point you just said about one marketing person come from market for however many. When I started rolling out the Australian skin clinics, I believe my one marketing person could market 10 clinics. And that proved to be absolutely impossible. So I think by the time we were at 7 clinics, we had 3 marketing people. So sometimes the economy of scale isn't quite as great as you think it's going to be. And I'm currently involved at the moment with a group who are buying up dermatology clinics, hair transplant clinics, and aesthetic clinics, and skin cancer clinics. For exactly that, we're looking to build a super brand with a much more cohesive management and admin structure, and then all these outreach clinics. And you see that happen in a lot of industries at the moment. It's happened in dental, it's happened in optometry. So
you're seeing it in GPs and things like that as well. Yeah. So are you doing that with the intention, the end in mind is to then sell what you create, that more robust, stronger, more valuable entity, a larger entity,
absolutely,
to then exit that?
And the trick is always to build something that is big enough for someone to want to buy it, but there's still room for growth for them to take it. So, you wouldn't want to build it to its maximum because nobody will want it then, nobody will pay you top dollar then. So you build it to, the next level.
Nice. So if you've learned a lot in your illustrious, 30-year career, 30 years of life, or just say it was about 30, I think you said you were. So what is it you've learned in this whole entire journey? And if you were to go back to, a younger version of you who's kind of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, trying to figure out what to do next, what are some of the things that you would actually take back and want to teach yourself or tell yourself to help you on your journey?
That be careful what you wish for, because every time I started out on a business or a new venture, I'm really good at looking where it's going to be. So I go from A to Z in one leap and then make the plan halfway between. I always spawn a monster. So it's become a bit of a joke, and it always gets unwieldy and it saps you in, and then you have to unentwine yourself. So maybe to get more help earlier, maybe might be one of mine. I've had a blast. So I always had a no regret policy, whether that's about business, relationships, anything I've ever done. But I think I'm also good at learning from my mistakes, but maybe I'd say to myself, make less mistakes. One of the absolute things that I say to everybody I meet is really be careful who you go into business with. I was in partnership with this group of 8 doctors for, like I said, nearly 18 years. And that was amazing. And in a way that spoiled me, that left me unprepared for things that were to happen later. So be careful who you go into business with is the big lesson. That's one thing I might have done differently.
I was lucky I had the complete beast to start with, the psychopath. Yeah. So
did I.
Good. It's the best.
And then you went in business with me for some reason.
It wasn't me, by the way. Yeah.
And, I think when you're a transparent, good person with good heart and genuine intent and willing to share and inclusive, you get sidelined by those who are working to different motives and, with a different ethic and a different intent. And it's, once once bitten, never again. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a great advice.
Awesome. Well, Deb, it's been incredible to have another conversation with you and to share this with the few audience. But I wanted to say a massive thank you for sharing some of your story, your insights, your grit, determination. It's very inspiring. You're I think third time lucky with retiring. Let's see how that goes. I'd love to hear you keep us in the loop with how that travels. But other than that, massive thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you.
And that wraps up another episode of The Few. Thank you to our partners, Afterburner, for team building, development and alignment. We understand now how important it is to have the right people around you. Get them on board with where you want to go. Momentum Media, the largest industry publisher in the country, connecting your business to the Australian community. ICMI, Australia's premier speaker bureau, representing the few that do fulfill their life's purpose. And finally, Sean's Inner Circle, the business coaching organisation for small and medium enterprises looking to make that next step. Thanks again for listening in and downloading today. Please leave a review on whatever platform you are currently listening to this podcast and reach out to our partners who can help you make the transition to the few.
Thanks, Deb. And you'll find links to Deb's universe in our show notes. Make sure you reach out to her, get her to speak at your next event, because honestly, the best lessons you'll ever learn is from somebody that has owned and operated their own business. I don't think there's anything Deb hasn't done and couldn't provide some pretty meaningful and high value feedback. So thanks again, Deb.
Thank you. Thanks.